Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you. And before we start, where's Mrs. Ainsworth? Yeah, oh, here we are. Before we start, I just wanted to say we're going to dedicate today's shiur to Tzvi David ben Yisrael. Mrs. Ainsworth's father. The yahrzeit was this week, this 4th of Av. Neshama should have an aliyah, elevation, and blessing for the whole family. So it's great to be back. It's been a while. I was away longer than I normally go in and out, but this time, as you know, it was a longer trip. I was going to just go for last week to do a teacher training course where we had 30 Jewish studies teachers that I in-serviced for a week. It was quite an amazing experience. But then my daughter decided to get engaged. I had to go a little earlier. So that was good. That's all good. But it was a beautiful trip, and in the teacher training part of it I learned a lot. As we know, we always learn mostly from our students. So it was very beautiful. Okay. So the topic this time is called Strategies for Better Living, and it's based on a little book which I'm going to talk about soon called Find Your Horizon of Healthy Thinking by Elisheva Liss, or I think her name is. And today what we're going to do is just do an introduction. First of all, I want to do a general introduction, but then also just talk about the basic principle of the topic and then explore it and develop it over the next few weeks. So, first of all, I wanted to go through an introduction, an important introduction, something we've talked about before, but just to bring me to this discussion. We talk about personal growth. So we know that personal growth, character development, self-improvement, all of these things it's an ongoing journey. It's an ongoing journey because it always involves, on some level, a little bit of a struggle, as we know. And that struggle is ongoing. We've talked about this many times. It's an ongoing struggle. Right? What we hope is, as we continue to improve through our life experiences, we hope that at least the goalposts of the struggle shift a bit. In other words, we hope that at least we start to master certain improvements and become automatic and fluent and easy to overcome. And then we continue to grow and climb up the ladder of the journey of self-development, and therefore the struggle sort of continues, right? But it's always a struggle, and for most people, the struggle is lifelong, and that's okay. As we talk about, the reason for that is because, well, there are a number of reasons. The reason that God designed us with character flaws and gave us internal challenges sometimes, besides external challenges, which we hope we don't get, but the internal challenges certainly we have often. And He wanted us to work hard to overcome it and to improve, is for many reasons. First of all, there's a concept written in Kabbalah, or that we don't want. God didn't want to give us what He calls Nahamadi Chsufa, which means shameful bread. Shameful bread means undeserving, just handouts. He wants us to earn. When you earn something, when you deserve it, when you work for it, it's stronger, it's yours. It's something that you've mastered on your own, it's something you have achieved. Right? But also we know that when something is mastered with work, it lasts longer. Right? Now, that has a lot to do with this time of the year, actually. We know that when the 10 Commandments were given, so we're currently in the period in the Jewish calendar called the 3 weeks. The 3 weeks begins on the 17th of Tammuz, a few weeks ago, and it's coming to an end this coming Shabbat Sunday, with Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, which is the day that we mourn the destruction of the temples, right? It begins with the 17th of Tammuz. That was the day that the Babylonians, or the Romans actually, breached the walls of Jerusalem and went into Jerusalem and eventually conquered Jerusalem and destroyed the temple. But it's also historically, going back in time, the day that Moses broke the first luchot. Moses broke the first tablets. Right? We know the story that when the Jews came out of Egypt, 7 weeks later they received the Torah on Mount Sinai, and with the Torah on Mount Sinai came the 10 Commandments engraved in stone. Those first set of 10 commandments were very holy. They were engraved by God himself. Moses brought them down the mountain. They were going to be kept in the ark and so on. And then what happened was, when he brought them down the mountain, he witnessed on the 17th of Tammuz, 40 days after the Jews received the Torah, he witnessed them serving the golden calf. They had fallen to the level of idol worship just 40 days after the whole event of the giving of the Torah. And the story goes that Moses saw them doing this, all kinds of reasons why, but the bottom line is he dropped them, smashed them, and they were broken pieces of luchot, right? Which of course was a great tragedy, and it's in fact one of the reasons that the 3-week period begins with the 17th of Tammuz, which is in fact a fast day, a mini fast day. Mind you, I was just in New York for it. It wasn't so mini actually. It was a long, hot summer's day with a heat wave, but we survived. But it's a mini fast, meaning it's not a 24-hour fast. That's how the 3 weeks begins. However, after that, so there's a famous story. After that, Moses goes back on the mountain. He asks God for forgiveness. God doesn't give it immediately, and they have to work really hard, and the Jews reconnect and repent. And eventually, after the third set of 40 days, Moses comes down the mountain. It was Yom Kippur, which is actually the origin of Yom Kippur being a day of atonement, where he brings the second set of luchot, the second tablets. Second tablets were then put in the ark. The ark is still around. It's hidden somewhere. King Solomon hid it towards the end of the first temple, and we believe it will be revealed again when Mashiach comes. Now, why am I sharing all this with you? Because the second tablets were nowhere near as holy as the first. The first tablets, God engraved himself. It was a gift from above. It was a purely divine gift. The second tablets, God told Moses he had to etch out, he had to engrave. Yet, the sages tell us that the first set of tablets didn't last, as holy as they were, and the second set of tablets are eternal, right? Last forever. In the ark, they're there, they're still there, somewhere. What's the idea behind it? Because not everything that is holier is greater. In other words, the first tablets were a gift from God, but a gift isn't always a good thing. Why God did it in such a way, it's a separate discussion, but the first set of tablets was a gift. God gave it to us on a silver platter. We came out of Egypt, we weren't ready. God schlepped us out, lifted us very, very rapidly into a very, very quick and rapid process of spirituality. 7 weeks later, we were suddenly already standing at Mount Sinai, and that was it. What happened? 40 days later, we failed. Why? Because it was given to us. We didn't work for it. We didn't work hard for it. When someone works for something, when the Jewish people had to struggle and they had to reconnect and they had to return to God on their own, when you work for something, it's stronger, it's deeper, it's more precious, and it's more long-lasting. So God designed us in a way where we would continuously grow. It's the function of the human being, it's the mission of the human being to continuously grow. And that growth comes with a struggle. And the struggle is ongoing. Again, we hope that the goalposts move a little bit, but the struggle has to keep and be mastered. Why? Because when we struggle for something, when we work hard, when we work on our character, when we exercise self-control and we put in the effort, a bit of a kvetch, a bit of a hard work, it lasts. It lasts and it's more precious. It might not even be as great or as holy as it would have been had it been given it on a silver platter, but it's deeper, right? And that's really the model of self-improvement altogether. When you work for something on your own, it's long-lasting. And this actually, just while we're on the topic of this time of the year, it's actually the story of the Jewish people collectively, actually. Because we have in our tradition, again, this Sunday is Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, and we're going to commemorate. It's a day of tragedy, actually, a day with many tragedies happened throughout the Jewish history. The two main ones that we commemorate are the destruction of the first temple and the second temple. So we have a tradition that there was two temples thus far, and ultimately when Mashiach comes, there'll be the third and everlasting and eternal temple. And we have an interesting model. The Talmud tells us that the three temples correspond to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Because when Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, all three of them, visited the Temple Mount, before it became Temple Mount, of course, but the spot that was destined to be the place of Jewish worship, right? The headquarters of Jewish experience. And the Talmud says the following, that when it talks about Abraham going to the Temple Mount, the terminology, the phrase that's used is mountain. He went to the mountain. Okay. When it comes to Isaac, Yitzchak, it says he went out to pray, and it was also talking about the Temple Mount, but it says Lasuach Basadeh. He went to pray in the field. In the field. Calls it a field, not a mountain. Right? And when it comes to Jacob, and he came there, it says he called it Sukkot. He called it Vayiven Lo Bayit. He built a house. In other words, the reference there, the phrase that's used there is the concept of a house. So therefore the Talmud says the first temple was like a mountain, the second was like a field, and the third will be like a house. What does this mean? I'm sharing with you because not only because of Tisha B'Av this Sunday, because really it's a great model altogether. So we have in personal growth, but I'll give you an analogy so it's easy to understand. When a child is born, right? A child can't walk, a child is dependent. So initially what happens is we schlep around the child in a carriage, in a pram. I never know which country they call it what, so anyway, but whatever it is. It's a carriage, pram, what's it? In South Africa they call it a pram. Yeah, pram, yeah, okay. Right? Now an interesting thing. When a child is in a pram, right? The mobility of that child is as quick as the parent. In other words, as quick as I can walk, that's how fast the child's going to get from point A to point B, right? Because it's depending on my walking. Okay. And it's very convenient. If you have a good pram, you just go, right? And you walk fast and you get there quickly. The fascinating thing is that when a child starts to take a few steps, everyone says Mazel Tov, and you call the grandparents and the in-laws and the cousins, put it on WhatsApp groups. Child's taking the first step. Everyone knows with that little children that when a child starts to walk, it's a pain in the neck. Right? It takes forever to get anywhere. Right? I just was in Maryland now on this past Shabbos. I was there. I was away for three Shabbos, each time in a different place. So the first Shabbos was an engagement. The second Shabbos was by my son who lives in upstate New York, and the third Shabbos by my daughter who lives in Maryland in Gaithersburg, a little Chabad house there. I'm saying it because on Shabbos, this past Shabbos, so my grandson started to walk now, right? So they live 5 minutes away from the shul, and he can walk it. It's good. So we're walking back on Shabbos afternoon. It's a hot summer's day. In the middle, he sits down. A gate nisht. He's not going anywhere. Right? And if you had that Shabbos experience of right place where there's no Eruv, you can't even pick him up. He's not going. As I say in Yiddish, to a meters. Not try to do something to him. He's not going. It's okay. His father stepped him up, held his hand, come on, we're going, and eventually we got him there. Right? So to walk there for adults, it takes three minutes. But with him, it took 20 minutes. Right? But it's a great thing. It's a mazel tov. What's the mazel tov? Now, obviously, the eventual goal is a combination of both. The eventual goal is that the child learns to walk at such a stage, to such a level where the mobility of the child on his own or her own becomes the same as the parent. Right? Eventually, when they grow up. But for a while, it's not like that. It's much slower. Children for a long time, it's slow. So what's the mazel tov? The mazel tov is when I push him in a pram, he's not walking or she's not walking. When they start to walk, they're doing it on their own. You do something on your own, it might be slow, but it's much better. Right? So they say the same thing is with the Bet HaMikdash, the temple. The first temple was known to be a glorious temple. It was miraculous. There were miracles that happened every day. It was beautiful. There was a feeling of a divine energy. There was an amazing spiritual atmosphere that reigned in the first temple for all 410 years that it stood. It was amazing. Right? The second temple, we are taught, was much lower. The second temple there was no miracles. The ark was missing, which is the main artifact of the temple. King Solomon hid it towards the end of the first temple. There was a lot of tsaros during the second temple. Yet the Talmud says that based on a verse in Tanakh, a prophecy, that the second temple was greater than the first. It stood for longer and it was physically bigger. Yet it wasn't as spiritual, it wasn't as holy. What's the difference? The difference is like this. The first temple So can I just ask someone at the back just to push that green button? Sorry a minute. Just because it's getting hot here. Thanks. The first temple was a gift from God. King Solomon built it. It was miraculous. It was built by prophecy. It was just like a dream, right? Given by God. That's why it had all this holiness and this miracle aspect to it and this divine energy, and it was an amazing thing. The second temple was not so miraculous. The second temple was built by the people. They needed permission from this Persian king. It was involved in a lot of difficulty, a lot of struggle. So it wasn't as holy, because it was built man-made all the way. But yet it stood for longer. Because the second temple was like a child learning to walk. Child learning to walk is not so fast, but it's a big mazel tov. It's deeper. And the ultimate goal is the third temple, which will be earned by all the long, hard work which we've been putting in, hopefully over the last 2,000 years since the second temple was destroyed. And it'll be like the child grows up and can walk on their own, but with the same speed as the parents, right? And that's the imagery of the mountain, the field, and the house. A mountain is a symbol of tremendous strength, but it's a God-made strength, right? It's tall, it's majestic, but all God-given, God-made. That's the first temple. That's like Abraham. Abraham is chesed. Chesed means God just gives it. It's revealed. He gives it to you on a silver platter. Now you need that stage, just like you need the stage of a child that is in the pram. Because before a child can learn to walk on their own, the child needs to observe the parent walking. That's fine. But that's not the ultimate stage. It was nice. It was good for a period. The second temple was like the child learning to walk. The second temple was a field. Yitzchak. Yitzchak is Gevurah. God hides. You know when a child starts to walk, how do you teach a child to walk? They've observed you walking, but after they start to walk, you dafka hold back, right? You know that cruel thing we do when a child starts to walk and then you keep going backwards, right? That's like a Gevurah thing. It's not a chesed thing, but it's important because otherwise a child can't learn to walk. You've got to let go, right? So the second temple, God says you're on your own now for a while, full of complications. The child falls down, they get up again. This whole thing, right? Exactly what the second temple was like. That's why it's like a field. A field's not majestic. A field's not tall, not strong like a mountain. But a field is a place where you work, you plow, you produce, you work hard. It's where the human effort is emphasized. The ultimate purpose is the third temple, where you've got height like a house, similar to a mountain, but it's man-made. So that's like the child is now an adult and can fully walk, right? That comes at the end of it all. But during our lifetime, so we have the models of personal growth. We get inspiration, we come, we learn, we sometimes get inspired by an amazing event, and so on and so forth. But that's the mountain part of life. But for the most part, personal growth is like the field. You've got to put in a lot of work. It's an ongoing struggle. And it's a good struggle. It's a beautiful struggle. It's a precious struggle. It sometimes seems hard, but it's a struggle we've got to keep on overcoming. Internal struggle, personality issues, weaknesses, temptation, anger, whatever the temptation, whatever the struggle is, but that's the field. That's where the real depth lies. So it's never a problem. It shouldn't be a problem. We shouldn't look at it as a problem, that it's a struggle. Because every time we overcome part of that struggle, even if you fall down again like a child, it's a big mazel tov. It's deep, it's ours, it's long lasting, we've mastered, we've improved, it becomes something that we've worked hard for, and it stays with us, even if we have a bit of a setback, but we get up again and we keep going, right? Ultimately, we reach a destination, that's the end of our life. But for the most part, it's the field that's so precious, it's that part of our life experience that's so important. However, and comes to the point I wanted to make, as a result of this concept, that personal growth is an ongoing journey, and sometimes an ongoing struggle, it needs constant reinforcement. And it's exactly like a muscle, right? It needs exercise. You don't get fit and then say, okay, now I've reached a level of fitness, now I can go to sleep, right? As we know, if we don't constantly exercise, we fall back. Simple physical analogy. And it's exactly the same thing when it comes to issues of personal growth. The issues don't change that much, but the exercise keeps on changing. The exercise keeps on being there. The necessity of keeping ourselves alert and exercising and strengthening the muscle of personal growth is so critical. when I was over the States now, so I was talking to someone. I wanted to know what BINA does, what is BINA, he'd heard, he's seen it somewhere on the web or something. So I was telling him all the stuff that BINA does, the various programs, the shirim, and then I spoke a lot about the personal growth stream, the BINA living that we do, and the shir and so on and so forth. So he says, how long has it been going? So I said, I don't know, over a decade. So he tells me, how do you keep coming up with topics? So it's a good question, right? So I said to him, listen, the essence of the topics don't actually change, right? What we started working on over 10 years ago, we're still working on. Maybe at a different level, hopefully. But we're still working on the same things. It's just the different way. Sometimes we do this exercise, sometimes we run, sometimes we walk, sometimes we do push-ups, sometimes we do, I don't know, whatever it is, right? So we change the packaging, and we change the ideas, and we package it differently, we express it differently, we discuss it differently perhaps. But it's not that the essence of the topic explains, and we keep coming back. And the reason we keep coming back is because we've got to keep doing exercise. Otherwise we slip back. And that's why the concept, we keep doing it, we just package it a different way perhaps, but we have to keep coming back and keep thinking about it. It's not something we master, it's not something we can achieve and that's it, I've done. Tick in the box, like we've passed a degree, we're now qualified, right? We never become a qualified personal growth expert because we're never personal growth experts, because we have to keep doing it, we have to keep exercising. That's the concept as an introduction that I wanted to share. And the main thing is that it's not even so important. The truth is like this. It's not even so important, the content. It's more that we're focusing on it, right? I know this from parenting, for example. I've done a lot of parenting workshops, and I've given a lot of parenting workshops, and I discovered over the years an amazing thing. That many parents come to different conclusions, have different methods, and they all succeed. Why? I mean, as long as they're reasonable methods, obviously. But because I've noticed like this, that it's not so much the method or the idea that's so important, it's the focus that's more important. In other words, the fact that parents actually think about parenting. There was a great Hasidic sage who said that just like it's a mitzvah, he says, to put on tefillin every day or to do other mitzvahs, he says it's a mitzvah for parents to dedicate time every single day to think about the education of their children. So what should they think about? Not everyone's an expert, not everyone's read books, not everyone, and when he said this, there wasn't a bookshelf or libraries full of parenting books. It didn't really matter. I think the fact that you think about it and you focus in it, that itself exercises the muscle. And same things with personal growth. We come back, every Thursday we come back at different lectures, we read stuff, we watch YouTubes, whatever the case is. The fact that we focus on it is what makes it so important. Just to think about it every week, every so often, just to come back and thinking about it, that itself exercises the muscle of self-improvement and character development, and that makes it so successful. So that's the first introduction I wanted to give. The second is, when we talk about challenges, right? So we talked about this before, that life divides into two types of challenges. There are big challenges, and those need different strategies, different tragedies, trauma, big significant things that happen to people which they have to overcome. But then there's just small challenges, the daily stresses, right? The daily stuff, which obviously also needs strategies, but it's those challenges which are sometimes the ones we ignore and the ones that we forget to sort of address. And really what we need is, they actually just need a mindset, a healthy mindset, right? And sometimes we just need to remind ourselves, what are the tips? What are the ideas that we need to have in our head, just to remind ourselves every day when these little stresses happen, what do we remind ourselves that makes us focus in sort of and try and experience life in a much more positive, relaxed way. And I'll explain to you what I mean, because it leads us to the model that I wanted to discuss, right? So what happened was, a few months ago, I heard an interview on a podcast with a therapist that works in the US, and she mentioned a book that she had written. So it sounded good, so I decided I'll always try and get these different types of books, and she'd just written a book on healthy living and healthy perspectives. So I took a leap into my technological training, and for the first time I actually downloaded it on Kindle app actually on the way. Yeah? It took me a while, I had to get help from someone, but we got it, right? Which is fantastic, because you can read it, you take it with you if you go, and now that I've done a bit of traveling and have to do more soon, please God, an iPad, a Kindle with all these things that you can download are fantastic. You don't have to take books with you, right? I bought the book anyway, by the way, because I'm just old-fashioned, but Anyway, so in this book called, I forgot what it's called. Hold on. Yeah, that's it. It's called. Find Your Eyes in Healthy Thinking. She develops a sort of a little model, its own model, I think, right, for healthy thinking, feeling and action, and develops the model throughout the small little book. And I wanted to share with you, and I thought we'd do a little series on it. Meaning, it's a model which creates a result which other models create too. But it's just an interesting perspective, and I wanted to share it with you, and that's what I meant by exercising the muscle, just a different way to exercise the same muscle. And today what I want to do is just spend time sharing with you the basics of the model, right? Which has more to it and many more layers, which we'll discuss over the next few weeks. So she says the following, I'm going to quote. She says like this: so often, she says, I hear a variation of the following problem. I want to be calm and content, but I just find my mind flooded with unhappy or anxious thoughts and feelings too much of the time. It gets me down or stressed. It's much of my nature and I don't even know it. I don't even know if it's possible for me to be any other way. So she says, I hear this from clients, from friends, but she says, I used to hear it in my own head too. And then enter the beach. And then she gives this model of imagery that she noticed, I guess, when she was on the beach. And the image is of the horizon. Okay. And I'm going to read it to you because she says very nicely. She says like this. This is a picture of the horizon. The horizon is a horizontal, which she says even in the word horizon, right? It's a horizontal line where the sky meets land or water. On a two-dimensional piece of paper, we can easily see the areas below, above, or right on the line of the horizon. In our minds, we can try to conceptualize the horizon as a divider between healthy and unhealthy zones of thought. So this is a model, that below the horizon is like the unhealthy zones of thought, above the horizon is healthy. So she says the following, she says there's three types of models. Imagine a person below the horizon. He has fallen into swirling waters and is struggling, almost drowning, right? That is how someone feels where he or she is deeply depressed or desperately anxious, furiously angry, bitingly critical, or bitterly resentful. Sometimes the tone of our thinking becomes so toxically negative and unhealthy that it robs us of the ability to thrive. I call that below the horizon of healthy thinking. There's a spectrum of unpleasant emotions that could be swimming there: discouragement, hopelessness, fear, anxiety, frustration, aggravation, anger, rage, and more. But the common denominator between them is a sense that somehow all is not okay. I'm not okay, you're not okay, the world's not okay, nothing is okay in these moments. All of that is below the horizon, right? So it's those regular feelings of just I'm in a bad mood, everything's okay, it's not working, it's not going where it should go, and we're just resentful, we're critical, we're anxious, we're upset, and so on and so forth. That's below the horizon of healthy thinking. Now, by the way, I always say when I talk about these things, not to confuse it, not to confuse when someone is in a state of unhealthy thinking or anxiety or depression, which is more clinical. This model is not going to work. That needs intervention, and that's different, right? I'm talking about just the regular day-to-day stresses when we're grumpy, right? Just on a regular day. So that's below the horizon. At other times, she says, we are simply in touch with reality as it is. We are neither bogged down by it nor uplifted by it. It just is. In our minds and with our words, we call it like we see it. This is what I call on the horizon of healthy function. On the horizon. At times, this is a perfectly good place to be and works quite well. It can be compared to a boat gently tracing the surface of the water by bobbing along the waves. It's okay. In other words, we're not particularly grumpy, we're not particularly positive. The day's going the way it is, and it's fine. And that's okay. That's good to have days like that. It's all right. But that's on the horizon. And then she says, finally, there's the seagull. Right? Seagull soaring upward above the horizon. That is when our thought processes take us to a place of good feeling, productivity, serenity, health, personal growth, and it doesn't need to be profound, right? Now, that's her model. That's basically the basis of the book. Now, it's a great model because it's a simple imagery that at every point of our experiences, it's a very simple model to remember. Right? We don't have to remember great depth. We don't have to remember sort of great, complicated, in-depth personal growth discussion. It's just a quick reminder to ask ourselves at various junctures of our daily experience, where are we? Below the horizon, on the horizon, or above the horizon, right? And the greatness of this model, of the simplicity of this model is this, that the experience is never going to change. In other words, and that's often what happens, right? The stuff outside of us, as we've talked about so many times, doesn't change. What changes is just where are we in the experience. The horizon is always there, the above the horizon is always there, the horizon is always there, the below the horizon is always there. The circumstances that are creating the problem or potential problem is always there. It doesn't necessarily change, and I can't change it, nor do I have the control to change it. The question is, where am I placing me? Right? Where am I placing myself? That's the question. And the question obviously is that if I'm placing myself below the horizon, how do we transition? How do we transition to on the horizon or above the horizon in order to be much more productive? Now, obviously, it's not simple, right? But as we said before, we're not so much talking, for now at least, about the real complex, in-depth challenges. We're just talking about the negativity and stress that are day-to-day stuff that sort of happens every day, right? Like, I need a plumber urgently and it's just not getting back to me. And like, what's the response? How do we respond to that, right? The internet is down and Telstra is not just not cooperating. Like, I've called them 17 times and I'm getting really irritated and I'm angry and the world is just bad at the moment, right? Now, nothing's happened, there's no tragedy, God forbid, thank God, and it's all good and life is okay. But you know, when we become dependent on the internet and you really need to send a couple of emails and it's just not happening, everything seems black if we go below the horizon, right? We're talking about those type of challenges. I'm late for an appointment. My friend said she would meet me at 3 and she's always late, right? That kind of thing. Oh, it's so cold today, you can die. You know, people say like, why is it so cold today? I wanted to take a walk and it's freezing and I know that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about now. That doesn't mean there aren't real challenges, there are. But it's the type of stuff that just happens every day to all of us, every so often, and it's the stuff where the weaknesses of our character cause us sometimes to get negative. Get negative, get anxious, get stressed, therefore get grumpy, and it's a spiral with other people. We irritate other people, they get irritated with us, we get into a conflict, we say things we shouldn't say, and so on and so forth, right? We all have those areas, right? Now, that's below the horizon, but we don't need to be there, right? Why do we need to be there? Because we just have to transition. And there are many ways that we could transition. One of the ways, in this kind of case, that's not always true, but in this case it is true, is to examine the power of language that we use, right? Words. Now, we've talked about this before. We know that when God created the world, the human beings are called the medaber, the communicators. In Kabbalah, we are taught that hanefesh mele'ah otiyot, which means the depth of the soul is filled with words. In other words, even though words on their own seem meaningless, because words are only really as good as the content that we put into them, but yet, for reasons we're not going to go into now, but yet words actually carry within them an amazing power. In other words, when I say something, nothing's changed, right? In other words, if I was thinking something or something was a fact before I said it, after I say it doesn't change, correct? But it's not correct, because actually, Kabbalistically, particularly we are taught this, words create an energy. When we say something, we create an energy. When we say something, we actually create a reality. And this is particularly true with descriptive language. In other words, often we're not describing a fact, we're describing something. We're not stating a fact, we're actually describing a fact. You know what I'm saying? In other words, when I say it's terrible, I'm so frustrated, or it's such a chutzpah, shouldn't get back to me, that kind of thing, that's not a fact, that's a perspective. I'm describing something, but my description of it creates a certain reality. Which is why the Talmud tells us that Lashon Hara, for example, is so bad. Because Lashon Hara, we are told, gossip actually damages 3 people, we are told. It damages the person who's saying it, the person who we're talking to, who's listening to it, and the person about whom we are speaking. It damages them. Why does it damage them? They didn't do anything wrong. I'm the one gossiping, right? But when I say something negative about someone, speech is so powerful, it's so negative, or positive, but it's so powerful that it creates a reality. It creates an energy, and it has an effect. An amazing thing. This is why we need to be so careful of our speech. We need to be careful of how we speak and the words that we say, right? So we know that positive speech creates positive energy. Negative speech creates negative energy. And has a negative impact on the one that's saying it, on ourselves, and the things that we're saying it about, or the people that we're talking about. You know, it's interesting, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, not everyone, I haven't seen this by everyone, but he was very into this, to the point that he took it to an extreme. He would never say good or bad. He would say good and not good. Right? He would say, what he wanted to say about, the Torah talks about, meriting the choice between life. He would say life and the opposite of life. Right? He would go to unbelievable lengths not to say things that even when you have to talk about things, you have to describe things. He would be very careful as much as possible not to say a negative way, but always to say it like as positive as he possibly could, right? Because he believed very strongly in this principle that words actually create a tremendous energy. Therefore, when we talk about the small challenges that we have every day, things that irritate us, things that get us going, if we committed to shifting our position from below the horizon to above the horizon, often it's the way we describe it. It's often the choice of words that we choose to say actually creates the energy. In other words, like this. Sometimes the words we say is a result of what we're feeling. So if I'm a positive person and I'm feeling upbeat, I'll say positive things. That's true. So it's describing just a reflection of what I am. But often it's the other way around. The words we say is actually creates my reality, creates my mood. Right? So the author of this book gives an example, and I'm going to give you an example, a personal example afterwards. She says, let's use an inconsequential example, she says. So she tells a story. She says, I left a message for a colleague, Jeff, a few hours ago regarding a 3-way consult with another colleague, Sue, and I'm waiting to hear back. So then Sue comes to me and says, so has Jeff gotten back to you, right? So there's 3 things I could say, she said. She could say, well, I left a message a few hours ago, but he hasn't bothered to call me back yet. Right? You see the negativity there? You say, that's the way, I'm bothered, First of all, there's judgment, there's a lot of judgment in there, which is something we have to work on. Also, naturally we tend to judge people. I mean, how do you know he hasn't bothered and he didn't really hear the message? Maybe he's got something on, maybe that kind of thing, right? But the kind of wording that's used when you say that makes me feel, when you say that, it makes you feel neglected or resentful. And that breeds hate. The language itself makes that happen. It's not just the way I'm feeling, saying it makes it worse. Right? Because we know that even the slightest of emotion, language will enhance it. Language will exacerbate it. That's why when people are angry, for example, the best thing for anger management is to be quiet until diffuse. People, when they're angry and they start talking, get angry as they talk. Right? That's just a fact. Positive is the same thing. Love is the same thing. Love needs to be spoken about. When you speak about love, love grows, right? So saying something like that pushes you back into the below the horizon. Alternatively, she says, I could say, I left you a message this morning. That's just a fact. That's it. That's on the horizon. That's okay. It's good. Good place to be. That's fine. Or she said, I could say, I left him a voicemail this morning, so I'm hoping you heard it, and I'm sure you'll call back soon. Right? Now, whether he will call back soon or not, it's a different story, but at least she's feeling better. Saying something like that lifts you up, makes you positive, makes you more upbeat. It's such a simple thing, right? And it comes from this imagery, where I want to be, below the horizon, on the horizon, or above the horizon, right? And it brings energy, it brings good energy, it brings movement, right? So I'll tell you a story. I was reading this book. I should have shares in the airline companies, because I was not this trip, but you remember, I don't know when it was, a couple of months ago, I went for my nephew's bar mitzvah, right? So it was a special bar mitzvah. It was my brother who passed away, it was his son. So it was very important to be there. So didn't want to go for long, so I left on a Wednesday. I'm telling you this for a reason, you'll see this in a second. I left on a good old Qantas airline on a Wednesday, hoping to get to New York Wednesday night, which would give me a day Thursday. Thursday night was bar mitzvah. Shabbos I was going to, Friday I was going to go to my son in Pomona. Shabbos I was going to spend with my mitzvah family away somewhere. Sunday I was going to leave back. Whirlwind trip, crazy trip, right? Get on the Qantas flight. So first of all, I get on the Qantas flight, and I know me with flying, right? This is something, one of my personal growth areas I'm working on for a long time. Making progress, thank God. But I'm going to tell you a story. I need to tell you something. I told this to the teachers when I was doing teacher training now. I told a lot of stories from the times that I taught and I was principal and so on. But I told them, I just want to tell you before I tell you stories, I only tell you stories that worked. Okay? I don't tell you the stories, doesn't know. I just don't want you to think, because I don't want to overwhelm them. I don't want to give them 20 hours of training and then they should say, well, teaching is not for me. I can't be that perfect teacher. Right? So I said, no, I only tell you stuff that works. Plenty of times I make mistakes. So when I tell you stories, the same thing. So I'll tell you a good, positive, personal growth story, but that's the one that worked. There's plenty that don't work, okay? So I'm by no means... Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I get on the plane. We taxi to the runway. Everything, thank God, it's a very small connection in LA. So, thank God, when it takes, when it's on the runway, you think, Baruch Hashem, thank God it's going on time, all good. We get to the runway, announcement comes on, there's a small technical problem, we have to have it seen to, and they always say this, in no time we'll have it fixed and we'll be on the way. Anyway, I'm starting a little nervous, and I thought to myself, no, come on, let's go, where's all the stuff we'll be learning on Thursday morning? Mindfulness, be in the moment, you got stuff to do. I said, okay, whatever happens. Hashgacha pratit, everything happens for a reason. If I don't get the Thursday night, I probably wasn't meant to be the Thursday night. The whole business, right? Okay. Anyway, it works, thank God. 3 hours later, we take off. I'm feeling all right, I'm okay. And whatever's going to happen. On the plane, I read this book. And I love this imagery of below the horizon, on the horizon, and the seagull that's flying up the horizon. I thought that's just a great way to be. Huh? Yeah, I said that's such a nice reminder for me, right? Anyway, we get to LA, and I don't know, like there was one of the most busiest days in LA airport, right? And we get off the plane, and they announced that obviously we've lost the connection, but normally that means they put you on another flight. There's absolutely no room that you've been booked on a flight for for Thursday morning. This is Wednesday afternoon. We get to late Wednesday morning because you cross the date line, you gain a day. We booked you, but of course we put you up in a hotel. I'm thinking to myself, no, I'm only here for 3 days. I'm here for my mitzvah. So I start to, and I think to myself, relax, above the horizon. Okay. So I get in this long line. Someone comes over to me. She says, "You want a voucher for the hotel?" I said, "No, actually, I'm in lines. I really want to see if they can book me on a different flight." She says, "But there aren't any flights." I said, "I know, but I'm here only for." I was assertive. Assertive is nothing wrong. I said, "Look, I'm only here for 3 days. For a very, very important function. I want to see if they have anything available. So I'll wait, it's fine, I'm on the line, I'll get the hotel afterwards." While I'm on the line, it was just an amazing scene to watch. And to be honest, I've been like that too before. Something like this is the first time it's happened, and I've been the way I saw people acting. Like they're blaming everyone. Like the poor person at the counter, the Qantas counter, didn't cause the technical problem on the plane, wasn't the pilot, didn't book the reservations, not their fault that the planes are full, they're just doing a job, right? They got so abused, it was unbelievable, right? We've been sitting on a plane, and it's true. When you sit to America, you've been sitting on a plane for as long. They because of the technical problem, weren't able to serve the last meal or something. We're starving, hungry. I wanted to say, you always take a little bit extra just in case, you never. Okay. Anyway, they're screaming and shouting, it's going, and I'm saying to myself, no, above the horizon. I'm going to be assertive, but above whatever happens, above the horizon, right? Anyway, finally, like an hour later, it gets to my turn. The guy calls me over. He says, "Good morning, how are you?" I said, "I'm fantastic and smiling." So the guy looks at me like I fell off the moon. He says, "Oh, that's nice." I said, "Yeah, it's been a long flight, but I'm smiling." He said, "What can I do for you?" I said, "Listen, I know things are full." I said, "I'm only here for 3 days. It's a really important function. I really can't get to New York Thursday afternoon." The mitzvah would have been right then, right? He says, "Let me see what I can do for you." All right? Goes to his computer, he says, "Well, I found something. I can send you on a red-eye flight tonight with Air Alaska." I said, "I've never heard of Air Alaska. Are they safe?" He says, "Yeah. Air Alaska, I thought, I don't know, some sort of dodgy airline or something." But he found me an empty seat, right? If I don't know, yeah, I said, "It's one stop?" I said, "No, one stop. It's called Air Alaska. We connected with them." I found out subsequently that Qantas actually works with Air Alaska. Anyways, but we can do it. I said, "Okay, if that's all you can do, that's all you can do. That's great. At least I get there Thursday morning." And then I didn't think, because it wasn't overnight, so I didn't think. And then he says to me, "Would you like an hotel for the next few hours, so at least you can rest up?" I said, "Fantastic." Like, it was really nice to me, right? He said, "Books me an hotel." He said, "I'll give you food." I said, "Not quite, because kosher is an issue, so don't worry." It was great. I went, rested up, took a walk, took a shower, came back, managed to sleep on the plane, got there Thursday morning. Now, what I'm trying to bring out was that nothing would have changed had I screamed and shouted or been negative. Or I would have been stressed, that's all right. And it's an amazing lesson. Thanks to her, thanks to the book. Because the truth is, it wasn't like the beginning of the flight where I was still calm. The truth is, when you're 4 hours late and then you take off, you sit for another 14 hours on a flight, you actually have had it after a while, right? It's a bit much. But it's just a simple thing because it really wasn't going to change anyway. And in fact, I probably got more out of him by being like that. And the most important part is that I remained calm and I was actually in a good mood. I was really in a good mood. I called my wife. She thought I was she was upset for me. I said, no, things are fine. Anyway, as I say, I only tell you the stories that work. But it's a great model. Why is it a great model? Because it's about language, right? And I really felt it. And I felt it just saying, well, I'm still smiling. I actually was smiling. And I was joking around with the guy. And I felt bad. It just created a whole calmness. And it was the most amazing feeling. It was one of the successes of, what we learned. When you implement something, it feels good. But it just was a different way of doing it. And I was tired and I was exhausted and all the rest of it. But a little bit of change of language in a case that's not deeply traumatic, it's not anything tragic, it's really not something that we need in-depth intervention or a whole process of resilience training and so on. These things can make a very big difference. There's that, she brings in a book also, but I've shared it with you before because I was making the rounds to the internet. There's that acronym, right, with about thinking before we talk. Such a beautiful thing, so I'm sharing with you again. And they say that thinking before we talk always helps to think that before we say anything, just this model, if we think, true, is it true? Right? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? All right? That's what think stands for. I'll give you a minute to drop it down. It's a very beautiful model. Why? Because again, the power of words. And if you want to transition in our day-to-day, regular, normal stresses, normal things that bother us, if you want to transition from below the horizon to above the horizon, words make a very big difference. And if we think before we say, what are the things we're saying? Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Was it kind? It's just amazing. Okay? Now, it doesn't always happen, but if we try at least one step at a time, it makes a huge difference. Right? What's interesting is, I'll share with you an interesting idea, that the word for speech in Hebrew is dibur. Right? A word is davar, a thing. It also means a word. But in Tehillim, in Psalms, in Tanakh, in Hebrew this works like this. Sometimes the same word can have multiple meanings. It's one of the beauties of the Hebrew language. Davar also means to rule. Right? In fact, on Rosh Hashanah, before Shofar, we quote a pasuk where we say, Yadber sonenu tachtenu. We ask God to let us overpower and dominate our enemies. Right? Yadber, same root, davar. So therefore, self-control, being a ruler over ourselves, controlling our emotions, often comes, the source is dibur, the source is speech. The way we speak will determine how we rule over ourselves, how we define our own reality, how we define our mood, our emotional stability, our calmness, our stress. Now, of course, it's not as simple as that. When it comes to stress, we need other things. We need a perspective, we need a way of thinking. We often need reframing, all the things we've talked about a lot. But a lot of the times, it's simple enough just to make a quick switch and say, it's okay, it was meant to be, or it'll be okay, and say something positive, or I'm smiling, or that kind of thing, and the whole thing just shifts, and it's just an amazing switch from below the horizon to above the horizon. Now, the truth is that in the time of the year that we're in, this is extremely important because it also has a tremendous impact on how we talk to other people and how we relate to each other. And we know, talking about this coming Sunday, which is Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, will be more the destruction of the temple. The Talmud tells us the famous concept that the temple was destroyed because of sinat chinam, because of baseless hatred and division and disunity. And we are taught that it will be rebuilt, please God, with baseless love, with just being positive to each other. And often that sinat chinam, that baseless hatred, or the avat chinam, baseless love, so to speak, or just unconditional love, probably is the better translation, is through speech. And it's dafka in these days, what we call the 9 days, the days leading up to Tisha B'Av, where we always talk about being extra careful and with greater emphasis of how we speak to each other and the words that we use, because the words that we use are so powerful, and therefore it's a good time of the year to actually think about this. And how do we speak to other people? How do we speak to those that are close to us? Often we speak nicely to those that are distant from us, but not so nicely to those that are close to us. And this is all part of this power of speech and the effect that it has on ourselves also in terms of the mood that we're in as well. I'm just going to show you something, actually it's not that related, but just as I was looking around, I just found this. It's just a beautiful, talk about positive news, right? Talking about being positive. Oh, that's the wrong picture. Oh no, here we are, that picture. That's a beautiful picture. That's a picture, there's a lady called Mrs. Shoshana Ovitz. She's a Holocaust survivor. She survived Auschwitz and Mengele, and she just turned 104. And she asked, as a birthday gift, she wanted all her descendants, children, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, to join her at the Kotel, the Western Wall. This just happened. There's actually a video of her speaking also. That's Jewish continuity for you, right? This is triumph. This is real positivity, right? So she lost her husband in the war. Her husband now, or her husband that she married later, also lost his wife. They met after the war, decided to rebuild. We're not talking about daily stresses, this is talking about real trauma. Decided to be positive, to rebuild, to build a family, and on 104th birthday, this is what it looks like. It's amazing. So this model, just going back to the model, this is a model, just one step in applying this model. It's a very simple application of the model. But as we'll see in the next few weeks, this model, this imagery goes a little bit deeper in the different layers. She applies it in many different ways, which we'll explore, please God, the next few weeks. In the meantime, have